Hello to everybody joining us on Facebook Live. I'm Steve Stott, President of the Sherman Players, and this is Keep the Ghost Light On from the Sherman Playhouse. And I'm here with my co-host, Robin Frome. Say hello, Robin. There we go. There's Robin. And again, as every week, we have some wonderful, wonderful guests for you. Robin will introduce them in a little more detail, but we have Steve Schroko, we have Leland Williams, and we have Tracy Liz Miller. We'll find out all about those in a second. Before we get into chatting to them, a couple of things from this week. Let's see. It was the Olivier Awards in the UK last night, I believe. Lots of star-studded glamour that was held over from earlier in the year. It celebrates the stage all the way up until February 2020. So lots for them to celebrate, not a lot after that, but lots for them to celebrate up until that. And it was noticeable to hear that Dear Evan Hansen got an award, which is old news in the US, but clearly a new play to UK audiences. The other thing that was noticeable was that a lot of the recipients gave a shout out to the thousands of people who support theatre and are currently without employment or currently idle in the UK because they have no work to do. And one of the things they called out was, please don't retrain, please don't go away and do anything else. Be there when it all comes back, which I think is it's a noble sentiment. Hopefully people can live by that and don't need to find other things to get into as a career. What else? A little bit of bad news from this area. We're in Connecticut, so just across the border in Westchester County, New York. I read today that the Westchester Broadway Theatre, which is a dinner theatre arrangement, which has been putting on high quality Broadway standard musicals for best part of 50 years, I believe, has announced that it is closing up, that it can't survive in this situation, which is a shame since things just seem to be easing a little, but clearly not enough to give respite to that particular theatre. So, and I know a lot of the people who have trod the boards at Sherman and the local theatres around here have also performed at Westchester and know people who have performed there and have worked there. So that's quite sad news. What else? Little bit of a shout out for the Sherman Playhouse in that this is Halloween week, which is very spooky. So on Halloween night, some of you may know, we are staging a little play by a lesser known struggling playwright by the name of Robin Frome, who's written and is directing Little Death Song, which we will be premiering on Halloween night online. I've still to finalize the very, very final moments of how we're going to stream it and what platform, but it's likely to be Facebook Live. So we'll put a little bit more information out about that. That's a very spooky rock and roll ghost story, and one warning is that it does contain strong language and themes of self-harm. It's a dark comedy for Halloween night. And running up to that, I will be posting out on Facebook and maybe other platforms some ghost stories. I've got a handful of local actors from this area who are well known on the stage around our area, who will be narrating audio stories of some classics for us, and I'll do that in the days before Halloween to prepare us for Robin's production. So watch Facebook, watch this space, watch everything, and I'll get that information out to you. Anyway, you're not here to listen to me do lots of adverts for things. We're here to talk to our guests. And with that, I'll kind of hand over to Robin, who can introduce our first guest. Robin.
Yes. Hello, Leland. How are you?
Hello. Hi, Robin. How are you?
Good. Leland and I met pretty 8 years ago, maybe, when you and your wonderful children's theater program rented out the Sherman Playhouse and kept coming, which is great. Most of the years, and we missed you this summer.
Yeah.
Couldn't do anything, but we were always looking forward to you guys coming up there from Fine Line. And you can talk a bit about how they're doing if you want. And otherwise, tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into the theater. I know it's a long resume, but try to keep it a little brief than usual. and then how you and Fine Line, or you individually, are dealing with the pandemic.
Well, first of all, let me say that one of the highlights right now is being here, honestly, and being here, and you too coming up with this great idea to help keep
We lost Leland
theater and
mid eulogy
artists
to us.
talking, singing, or working together.
We lost you for a short moment. Obviously, our flattery filter kicked in that stopped you from praising us too much. But but thank you very much for the thought.
I wanted to. It does say that I'm a little unstable in more ways than one here. So I'm connected right to the Ethernet. So I'm not sure why it's unstable. But anyhow, that is just a metaphor for life at this point. But I did want to thank you for this. And it really is important to keep people's minds on theater and to keep creative people talking and expressing and voicing their opinions and sharing their ideas, because we are not dead yet. And we got to keep moving. I have a lot of friends out there who are, let me just put it this way. I don't know the name of the improv game, but you're handed a regular everyday household object and you have to come up with a million different uses and names for it. And that's what I feel like I do every day. It's an egg beater, but now it's got to be a 3-word comedy. I have to come up with so many things, and all the balls are up in the air. And that's what's going on right now. It's a highlight, and it's also a burden.
Yeah.
So my highlights, or my quick biography, is I grew up in New York. I went to a nice, lovely Catholic school in Somers, and they did not feel that perhaps theater was an acceptable profession. So I thought that I should really take my reputation of being the spawn of Satan and push it to the edges of the earth and continue with my education. I went to SUNY Purchase for a short bit, but it was very competitive and I did not fit into that world as well. And then I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, which I loved and I thrived at, and got out and studied there a little bit with Michael Howard. And it occurs to me that Yogi Berra used to say, if you come to a fork in the road, take it. And I think many of us have had careers where they go in so many different directions. And when I was at Michael Howard, a friend of mine hooked me up on a blind date. And 35 years later, we are still together. And we have 2 children and 2 incredible grandchildren. And I ended up working with Scott Wise, Broadway Scott Wise, we call him, and his incredible wife, Elizabeth Parkinson, here in Connecticut, of all places. And I've been teaching there for 15 years now. And if those nuns knew right now that I was a teacher, I think they would all drop dead. Not where I was expecting to go at all, but I took that fork in the road. And I was actually teaching at my youngest daughter's elementary school, and I was working with a child who had a lot of mental and behavioral challenges, and she was just in kindergarten, and I was a substitute, and I was using every acting exercise, every game I could think of to keep her focused, to keep her together. And as I was leaving the building at the end of the day, the principal chased after me and said, "I will pay you triple." I haven't heard that since, but I'm okay with that. And that's when I started. I said, "Oh, maybe I should be doing this." So I started teaching at Fine Line. And I love teaching. I love being around children and teaching them acting, because they are incredible sponges that I can still learn from. You know, they still think so much out of the box that it keeps me going. And then recently, I was working with Patsy Rodenberg, one of the greatest voice coaches in the world, and I started becoming a mentor of her, and recently became a registered Rodenberg teacher, where I'm going to be teaching voice, any kind of voice and breath and body work. And my hope in bringing better communication skills to the kids out there. So my hope is to turn this into some kind of curriculum that we can add to a regular public school education, so that the kids can be better communicators. I've started a little bit of it already, working in all the micro schools in the area that have bizarrely and wonderfully popped up for some kids. So I've started a little bit of that. So I'm very excited about, despite the pall over the world right now, I feel like we still have to pull stuff, the positive from it somewhere. So that's really what's going on here with me. How about you guys?
It's interesting. What you're saying about, you know, pulling things from everywhere.
You're freezing on me.
I think maybe it's your connection, and maybe me. Maybe I'm just finally shrugging off this mortal coil, but we'll see. But yeah,
thank you.
This
no, it's definitely me.
This notion of pulling things together and having more to do now than you did before is absolutely a theme we've heard. Yeah, I can speak for Robin. You know, in this, just observing what Robin's up to now, in terms of, you know, being creative, getting involved in stuff. And I know, Robin, you've commented on the online presence, haven't you, and how that reach has gone. Maybe you want to just sort of talk about that again.
It's global. We can get, in fact, I'm booking for December right now, and Steve, I think you see the people getting added on every day. And these people are, one of them's from Poland, one of them's from the UK, you know, Canada. We had Barry on, so that's great stuff. And that we can all, you know, have this daisy chain around the world for the theater purposes. But again, you know, I'm doing private students. Leland talked about this as well, doing the micro stuff, and it's amazing. I can work with someone in Michigan. I can work with somebody in Connecticut, or even, you know, the UK, although the hours are kind of awful there for me. I don't know about for them, but yeah, it's that's the opportunity. And the downside, as we all know, is we miss the stage. We really do. Leland, are you still there?
I am.
Okay. And I wanted to tell you that I had substituted for you a few times when you went on vacation, and your kids were magnificent. They were absolutely magnificent. And I know that you were cultivating some great stuff. They were doing some, you know, cultural scenes from great plays. And I just, I had to give it up. I had to give it back to you, which really pissed me off. I'm just kidding. So, and that's a great place for everybody to go. Marianne Lamb as well, teaching there and stuff like that. And so in the future, do you think that you will continue some of the Zoom broadcast or whatever, the Google chats or stuff like that, and be in person?
Yeah, I think they're invaluable. I think they actually at some point made me a better teacher. They really forced me to be incredibly present and use the least amount of words with the most impact at all times. So I have to always be with them at all times. Yes, would I prefer to be in a room? But sure, but now I can, like you said, Robin, teach to people all over the world, which is incredible. When I started my Rodenberg training, it was not this past summer, but last summer, and there were 17 of us they're all over Russia, Germany, Switzerland, Italy. There was only 2 or 3 of us from the States. And then when this summer came, we thought, how do we take a voice class? How do you do Shakespeare and all the Canterbury Tales and all this incredible medieval poetry and work on your voice and your presence on Zoom? How are we possibly going to achieve that? And we're from Hawaii and Australia.
Right.
So we thought that Patsy would just, put us off for a year. And she said, no, we're going to do this. We are going to do this. And thankfully, we're here in the United States. So I was one of the lucky ones, but there were some of my colleagues that were up at 4 o'clock in the morning, or the one from Australia started class at 12 o'clock at night, and had to.
Looks like we are still having some
incredibly available.
There we go.
Yeah,
looks like we still are having some issues.
Sorry about my unstable connection.
No, that's okay. That's okay. If anything, this is a good example of where people are now. That people have to be in this position, have to be in the situation where they can connect electronically, and in a few weeks' time, Robin will probably tell me exactly when, we're having a special with tech people.
That's in a week.
It's next week. It's next week. Next week is our tech special. Next week is our tech special. Next week is our tech special, and we are one of the things that came up when we talked tech a few weeks ago was whether the technology is ready for presenting productions online, whether it's ready for teaching online, teaching theatre online and theatre arts online, and it'll be interesting to see what the opinion of that is when we talk tech in a bigger forum next week, because my perception is we're almost there for this kind of format, but not quite yet. It's worked pretty well for us, but as we see, there's still glitches, and as far as technology to allow performance to happen when you have to be social distanced, that too seems to be emerging as well. So that'll be an interesting thing for next week, and you've given us a great segue into that.
Yes, thank you, Leland.
Yeah, so thank you. Just one sort of final sort of question on where you've been coming from. You've trained in person with with people you admire. You've learned the ropes in person. What do you think this kind of medium for training, what do you think that lacks, and what do you think it may have that in-person training maybe doesn't have?
Well, certainly it has you're not, when you're definitely with theater, you're not feeling fully attached to your body. You're a floating head. But it does help with your focus.
Mm.
It does really help with your focus.
Yep.
No, I mean that's interesting because we kind of heard that, and in fact it was Liz. It was Liz who was on the call on the show way back, who basically said the same thing. She said, you know, when she's teaching now, she's got to be thinking about, well, people are in that position. How can I adapt what I'm doing to the fact that you've got to do a scene or you've got to, you know, do some sort of training in your environment and not in the controlled environment of a studio or a theatre or wherever. You've got to be able to think about how to pinpoint what it is about that environment that you can use in your performance. So it's, you know, it's great to hear these themes coming back round. So that's great. So Leland, don't go anywhere. Just as Robin says, slide across the couch, and we'll get our next guest to chat to us. It's been lovely. Stay where you are. Don't go anywhere. And Robin, over to you to introduce our next guest.
Yeah. So we'll do girl, boy. Steve Schroko, how are you?
Oh, you're on mute, Steve. I'm afraid I muted you. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Okay, I think I achieved that.
Aha, you did. We lost you for a moment and got your headshot, and which I have to say is one of the most accurate headshots I've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
It really looks like you. It must be someone else completely. So there we go. So over to you, Steve.
Well, it's
Steve.
okay.
Steve came to the Sherman Playhouse after being a corporate man for a while, and started with a play that we cast him in, that Catherine directed, and it was Other Desert Cities. Steve, I think, had a great time. Was pretty impressed the way he was talking about it with us, and then his career started rocking and rolling, you know, as far as film and everything else. And so I was so glad to see that going on. I see your Facebook posts about different things that you're doing, and all the successes is great stuff. Lean periods and not so lean periods, which is par for the course. And so I really wanted you to have you be on this. And I also you were on the Roundabout board.
Correct.
The board of directors.
Correct.
Okay. And so you had some knowledge in that fashion too. So I wanted to pick your brain about that. But so give us a snippet of your career from, you know, when you started in one career and moved on to the next, and how has this pandemic affected you?
Sure, Robin. Well, I want to give kudos to the Sherman players, but let me walk you through it. It's an honor to be with you all, and I echo what Leland said about, you know, this being a highlight of this whole situation. So just by way of background, I'm the first kid in the family to go to college. My mother was born in the Bronx, dad was Queens. Really had no guidance, and really trying to find, you know, what my passion was. My father was a semi-pro football player for a little while. I'm the eldest of three boys. Both of my younger brothers, great athletes. I didn't get it. I just wasn't an athlete. I didn't get it. So I was fumbling around trying to see what would happen. And then fortunately in middle school and then ultimately in high school, I found the stage. And that's where I found my voice. And I will never forget the moments early on when I was on stage and you have a dramatic moment and you can feel the audience breathing with you. And I have to tell you that the power or the empowerment that I felt in that moment, and so, you know, I was in my teens, I don't think I've ever felt again in my corporate world. And so I knew I had to come back and get to the stage. So long story short, again, family really doesn't have a lot of money, a lot of love for me, but the finances weren't there. I was very good in math and science. When I wanted to go on to dramatic school and become an actor, my parents said, good luck, but how are you going to pay the bills? And so one thing led to another. I ended up I guess, using my head instead of my heart. And I became a chemical engineer working for IBM, got into manufacturing semiconductors early on in the late 70s. And ultimately went back to business school and found a way to get back to New York, because I was just working right up here at the IBM in East Fishkill for a few years. But I knew that I wanted to get back to New York City because my goal was to have my day job in finance, but at night and on the weekends and during holidays, act, because I wanted to get back to the stage. So I ended up working with the old chemical bank, and I was there for 22 years. Ultimately, they merged with JP Morgan, worked there, and ultimately became involved with UBS, and that's where I left. But during my 20s and 30s, when I was in the city, knocking around, I never really had any success. And foolishly, you know, I would do a public service announcement with Brooke Shields, and I would figure this is going to be my break. And of course, nothing else happened. And then I got a commercial on Dr. Zismar, if any of you remember him, the dermatologist in New York. I thought that was going to be it. That didn't go anywhere. Ultimately, I was 37 years old, got cast in an off-Broadway limited run, non-union production that was really well done. The cast was great. The director was great. I was actually not bad in it. And so I had gone to all of the contacts that I had in the soaps and everywhere. Nobody came to see it. And I said, you know what? It'll never get better than this. And I had just made managing director at JP Morgan. And I said, you know what? Let me just put this on hold. Let me see if I can get to a time in my life where I can just devote myself to acting full-time, financially get myself situated. And ultimately, almost 25 years later, I did. And so as I'm leaving UBS, and I want to give a shout out to Sherman Playhouse, I auditioned for Other Desert Cities. And Catherine Onquist was very kind and cast me in it. I had seen the show because obviously in New York, I would see shows all the time. I actually had real love for this show. I had seen it about 3 times in various iterations of the cast and just loved the production. And then to have the ability to really delve in and work on this was amazing. Of course, being out of the theater for 25 years was very intimidating, especially because I was cast opposite Kate Colburn. And many of you know her. She is a legend up here. She's an amazing actor. And I have to say, I was extremely intimidated because about halfway through the run, we were talking and I realized she had done this before. And so I felt totally inadequate because I'm sure that, you know, the gentleman she was cast opposite was probably much more seasoned than I was, but she was so gracious and so generous. She really gave me a lot of breath to explore that character. I have to say, with everything I've done, it's now been about 2.5 years. Everything that I've done, again, the Sherman Playhouse and Other Desert Cities is the highlight. I have not done anything that compares to that experience with you guys. Look, I'm hoping something will happen. As I had shared with Robin, I really had a breakthrough for this summer. I got cast in 2 union jobs. One was at the John Engelman Theater on Long Island. The other was the New Bedford Theater on the Cape. These were real breakout roles for me because the John Engelman show was Anything Goes, and I was going to play Elijah Whitney. So it was a star moment. It was going to be great, and I've always been a little bit uncomfortable with my voice, singing voice, and that was going to be a great experience. But anyway, signed the contracts, and of course, nothing happened. So basically everything's been on hold for me. I just did got 2 gigs to TV and film. I did a segment on the History Channel, The Food That Built America. And then on Friday, just this Friday, I did my first pharmaceutical commercial. So that was great. And for anybody out there who's listening, who has some trepidation about working in the film or TV industry right now, I have to tell you, the protocols are amazing. I've been tested now 3 or 4 times for each of those gigs. And on set, people were absolutely respectful, bending over backwards just to make sure that things were right. And actually, it was very important to me because the silver lining of this pandemic for me is that we lost my mother-in-law in July, but we were able to usher her through end of life, and I was able to be there for that. And so we were vigilant with the protocols so that we could spend and be very safe with her, so that she was able to do end of life at home, very, very comfortable. And I still have, my two parents are elderly, and I just want to make sure that I can continue to see them. So for those of you who have had any type of, let's say, being a little bit hesitant about doing anything with TV and film, the protocols are amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I mean, I did a thing way back nearer to the start of the pandemic, or when the restrictions came into place, a medical training video, which I've done a few before, and I've been on site for those. This was all done over Zoom, and the notion was that it was telemedicine. So even I'm really interested to hear that the protocols are now in place to allow the in-person stuff to go ahead, since there's probably only a limited amount that you can do over Zoom for some of the jobs that are out there. So well done. And I'm sorry to hear about your loss, but it does sound as though, as you say, you had the silver lining was that you were able to focus and concentrate and be present. So I'm sure that was a relief to everybody. Your stint at the Showman Players, and thank you very much for that shout out for us. Other Desert Cities was a beautiful production, and you're absolutely right. Kit is a class act, and we had her on the show a few weeks ago, and she was as delightful as ever. And also she is reading one of my ghost stories this week, so you'll be hearing from Kit again, and we always love having her back. She was back to play Mrs. Robinson. I know. Who else do you cast? So but as far as your experience in that show, you were perfectly cast in that show, and if you had nerves or you were coming up to speed, it didn't show. And I think that's a testament to Catherine with her directing, and also to the whole cast for that. Now you signed for a couple of professional gigs, and they didn't happen. Have they been put on hold, or is it just done?
Yeah, it's really interesting, Stephen. You bring up a very good point. You know better than I the intricacies of being able to secure property rights in certain segments, time segments. Mm-hmm. And what happens is that if you lose that, you're hoping that not some other theater company takes the right or are scheduled for the rights post that. And so that's the issue for both Annie in New Bedford and Anything Goes, is that local theater companies in the area are now assigned it. So the question is, and as you know, this is a moving target. Yep. We don't know when things are going to open up. I mean, I'm just sending an audition today for San Diego, where they've just moved their production up until starting rehearsals in April to open in May. I don't even know if that's going to happen. So right now, all bets are off. When this started, to your point, Steve, I was hoping as an actor that, maybe they'd push it later on in the season or do it in the same slot next season. That's all gone. That's all gone. And so basically I've dashed those hopes, and we're just hoping that when things open up again, hopefully I get some more work.
Well, a lot of what I'm hearing from people is that it's, everybody's in the same position. Everybody in the arts is in the same position. And we talked about this last week, that there's so much support for people within the arts. and people are thinking and people are looking out for each other, that that if you have a director who's cast you and can't do what they want to do, there's a reasonable chance you're still in the back of the mind, or even in the front of the mind for any other projects. So, you know, fingers crossed for that. And you know, as you found, it's an interesting time to be getting into the profession as well. You've had a couple of years of you know, building, and now it's flat. But it sounds as though you're in the perfect position to pick up again once everything comes back. So, Robin, do you have any questions?
Yes. Yep. Steve, if you could comment, and tell me if you can't, Steve Schroko, if you could comment on what's going on with the Roundabout and if their climate there. I'm not sure if you're still on the board there. Can you comment on what their philosophy is these days?
Absolutely. So I had been on the board for 12 years, and I'm now on what they call the leadership committee, but more importantly, I'm on their investment committee.
Okay.
So we're constantly in the thick of what's happening there. Fortunately, they were able to engage in the PPP program, and that has been helpful. Not having, and just to level set, they run 4 different theaters. So you've got the Stephen Sondheim, the American Airlines, Studio 54, and the Miriam Steinberg Center. And there's a lot of overhead just to keep that going. But interestingly enough, it is even more expensive, of course, when you mount a show. And so they've been trying to walk a very delicate balance of trying to keep as many people employed, but being fiscally responsible, and it's been tough. Now, interestingly enough, we were very fortunate. We were just completed an endowment fund raise where we raised over $50 million for the theater. And literally the week before we shut down, we had our gala, and we were able to raise over $3 million, the most we had ever raised before in our gala. So that really helped ease what we're going through, and hopefully this will not last forever. But one of the other things that happened during this was, for any of you who have been at Studio 54, the downstairs lounge pipe broke and destroyed the place. So that's an added, you know, salt in the wound of trying to make things happen. We're also in the middle of renovating the American Airlines Theater. And interestingly enough, because the renovation just was getting underway as the pandemic hit, we've been able to be more mindful of the HVAC needs of a theater of that size, to make sure that we are top of the line. Because honestly, folks, the more I read about this is not the end of it. There will be, unfortunately, other pandemics. So we want to make sure that we are as prepared as possible.
And so,
helpful, Robin.
Yeah. Steve, did you have something?
Well, I was just going to pick up on that last point about the work that you're doing in the theatres. Do you find that, given the fact that you basically can't do anything else, that there is more focus on doing work on infrastructure? Do you find an opportunity in this situation to get done some of the things that maybe you couldn't do if a season was running?
Interestingly enough, we were already prepared to shut down the American Airlines Theater for this renovation. But Steve, to your question, I think we've been able to focus on some other elements, not only infrastructure, but more importantly, and Leland, I really give you a lot of credit on your theater program. Roundabout has also been focusing on their theater program, which perhaps didn't get a lot of focus and now is getting more focus. There's a lot more work being done on the development side and understanding and doing a deeper dive on what, and being more creative on how we can start to get people coming back to the theater in a meaningful way. Is it just simply showing reruns of stuff that we have taped and let people enjoy it as a filmed experience? Or is there something interactive that we can do? And so from a development standpoint, they're focusing on existing ticket members as well as donors to the theater of having an interactive reading that's coming up. And they're going to see how that works and whether or not people actually do feel fulfilled. And if not, then how can we improve it so that we do? I don't know for you folks on the call here, but and Robin, I'm really excited to see what you're going to be doing, with the readings, and Steve with the readings out of Sherman. But some of the stuff that I've seen already being done on Zoom is nice, but it's not as fulfilling, of course, as being in the theater. And so I'm trying to find that secret sauce where I can really feel as fulfilled as, as closely as possible as to being in the theater.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Robin.
To comment on that, we chose this as a two-hander that was basically being done through one of the lead's mirror, and the ghostly apparition is coming through her mirror. So the Zoom would work for that. But I totally and completely agree with you on, you got it. I don't know if the word Zoom worthy is coming out of this, but a lot of the theater, you can't do it. You just can't do it. And then readings, or even readings, you need to be there, I think, for the most part, just to get the energy. So that's tough. And Zoom's not the end all be all at this point, but that's mostly all we have. But so it's great to hear. There's some really good attitudes at this huge Broadway theater, and I'm so glad to hear you're using the HVAC and all that stuff, and renovation and all of that is going to behoove, for the future. And you got good information, Steve. I really appreciate that. You're like the inside man here. But that is very positive as far as dealing with it now, and the near future, not the full future, but the near future, which we do every day. We get it every day. So shove down the couch a bit. And
we'll shuffle you along. There you go. Don't go anywhere, because we'll be back to you shortly. So Robin.
Yeah. So Tracy, how are you?
I am very well, thank you.
It's wonderful to see you. I really appreciate you coming on.
I'm so happy to be here.
Your husband, Kent Burnham, was just incredibly enlightening, and at a wonderful school. I hope that schooling is going okay. He was telling us a bit about what they had to do and everything like that. And your playwriting stuff going on in the summer. Hopefully this upcoming summer, we'll see if something like that will happen. And then, it was great to hear from you. It's the first time we've seen each other in person. So why don't you tell us highlights of your career? We only have a little bit of time left, so don't go on for 2 hours.
Okay.
Most of our guests can go on for 2 hours, and they're very good at bringing it down. So, and then how the pandemic has affected you, and you can bring your family in with Kent and everything like that.
And well, first of all, thank you. Any time spent in the Zoom world with other creatives is a balm to my soul. And I can say that overall, the balance of the introvert extrovert lifestyle that so many artists have to find, it's flipped in the other direction. And I just, not having time in the studio, in the rehearsal halls, it's hard. But what I do now and what I have done, Well, I've got a BFA in music theater from Western Michigan University, and I was born and raised in Michigan. And then I got my MFA from Alabama Shakespeare Festival, University of Alabama, after a few years putzing around doing internships and whatnot. And then, as everyone else in that program, made my move to New York. That was the expectation, and something I never really thought I would do. I actually thought I would become a teacher in a sort of opposition of Leland. And then just sort of the tide of what my expectations of the particular program I got into, then I just, all right, I'll go to New York City. And I was there for 14 years, mostly identifying as an actor for hire. Member of the unions, and did a lot of work. I would say most of my stage work was outside of the city. So I was being hired regionally, and then coming back to the city and, bartending and waiting tables and doing the schlep jobs. And sadly, probably making more money per week bartending than I ever was as an actor. And I would get those little nibbles of, a spot on a soap or something like that. I'd be like, ooh, real paycheck. And that, similar to Steve, thinking that it was going to roll. But after a while, I found that when I was outside of the city working at theater companies, the connection to the communities, such as what people can have at Sherman Playhouse, was really what I just adored. I loved actually having an impact on the community and having real discussion around the plays and learning how the ideas were manifesting and changing in the audience right before my eyes. And I found, as much as I adore New York City, where the theater I was doing in the city, it was, scrape together a bunch of money, rent the downtown theater for a few weeks, which was an enormous amount of money to us, but a piddling amount for, say, the Roundabout, and putting together, a show and producing a show. And so I started to produce in New York City, and the majority of my audience, of course, were all of our friends using their equity cards to get the free tickets, But what I learned from doing that was that I enjoyed producing, and I enjoyed putting together what was needed to do theater. So I did an internship at the Women's Project in New York City. And then a few years later, still doing acting, doing a little bit of directing, starting to produce. And I would say then our daughter came along. Ta-da, surprise, you put a baby in the mix, and your teeny tiny Astoria, New York apartment doesn't seem so awesome. We did take her on the road as hired actors to Colorado and Massachusetts and Maine and Albany, New York, and a couple different places when she was portable. And then when she became a mobile human being, things changed. And we just wanted to have a different, we wanted to stay in theater, but at a different way of going about that. So my husband, Kent Burnham, took a job in Arizona, his first full-time teaching job as a director of theater arts at a school there. And we moved, and I had never been to Arizona, except maybe, I think we visited the Grand Canyon in our motorhome back, way back in the day, but I don't remember. And we started fresh, but it was a really terrific opportunity for us because the other things we wanted to focus on, but yet we couldn't really quite crack into in the New York City market, was wonderfully available to us. They need artists there. They just had a huge loss, I would say, of tremendous talent because the state had pulled their tax breaks for the film industry, and there was a ton of film being done in Arizona for decades, and they just, probably the more conservative Republican governor yanked the funding because the arts don't matter, right? And the arts don't really bring bazillions of dollars to their state. So they even said no to Disney putting a studio there at that time. So we had arrived in the Phoenix Valley after that had happened, and right after the, you know, the latest recession, and there was like theaters closing left and right, equity theaters. And so we decided, well, we'll look at it as an opportunity. So I found a like-minded individual who was also a transplant from New York City, and we founded the Bridge Initiative, Women in Theater, and we were addressing the vast gender disparity that was happening in not only performing or the theater, but the rest of performing arts. And we won a grant from the Arizona Commission of the Arts to start. And we, the best way we thought, we read somewhere, probably some genius before us said, how do you help the marginalized, underrepresented voices is will you develop their work, because their new work is what should be on stages. And female identifying artists were woefully underrepresented, not just in Arizona, but across the US. So we started there, and before we knew it, we were in the national conversation, because we were one of the only theaters in the Southwest, professional theaters, that was addressing that. And giving opportunities for playwrights with national playwriting contests. And my advocacy timeline started, and that's continued, not just for female identifying, but LGBTQA+ and BIPOC artists. And that's continued to be sort of an over-encompassing mission that also Kent and I have continued with the Pauling Theater Exchange. So when we moved back up here, I did a lot of directing down in Arizona, and of course a lot of producing, and started developing new plays. And we looked at the campus of Trinity Pauling School, where Kent just got this position as director of theater arts, and saw a beautiful spaces and campus that were dormant in the summer. And immediately thought, well, we need to do something. But we didn't want to take on a full production line of schedule where months out you're getting ready, you're in pre-production, and then you eventually produce a show and bringing audience in and all of that. I had done that, and that seemed to be a little less interesting to me at the time. And Kent was like, yeah, because we also should maybe breathe a little bit, and you know. So we came up with the idea of the Pauling Theater Exchange, which is new play development, new works, so companies can come into the spaces and use it. We just hand them the keys, and professional development. So we had stage combat training sessions. And then this summer we were going to do theatrical intimacy education, which is something that that is something I've been doing over this pandemic time. They pivoted and are offering their training sessions online. And so anyway, we were going to double this past summer. From our first summer of hosting 65 artists, 7 playwrights, with directors and actors, and pretty much just calling up our friends. Hey, you want to come up for the weekend? We'll feed you and put you in a dorm room. How nice is that, right? So luckily, we had a lot of gracious friends in the field that were like, sure. I mean, it was in June. A lot of people could take the train to get out of the city if they wanted to. A lot of people came down from Albany, the Berkshire area, Connecticut. We had playwrights, 3 playwrights from Connecticut. So we started, and I think we're in a really fortunate place in that we don't have overhead like bigger institutions. We live on the campus. The campus is available to us. The school was super pleased that we were going to be using the space, and it was going to be respectful adults, not maybe like a kids sports camp where they have to like repair the fields after the soccer camp and things like that. I think they were really excited to have the school known in a different genre, in a different area, in a different way of reaching to the community. And then also I'm director of education at Saratoga Shakespeare Company, which is, I got the job in February, I kid you not, and then busted, worked hard to overhaul all the programming with the new leadership, the new artistic director, Marcustine Fuller, a new managing director, because they just changed over leadership, new board members, and we hustled and got ready to, and I had even recruited all of the college and just post-college age young theater professionals to be our professional training program. And I was going to be directing 12th Night with them and acting in the main stage. And it was going to be a dream summer on the campus of Skidmore College and in Saratoga Springs, right? And Kent was going to be artistically involved. And our daughter was pleased as pie to come back up and be at Saratoga Children's Camp and, you know, and just being around that. I mean, she's grown up in the theater and it's a home for her. She knows the talk, she does the walk, and she loves being around all the theater people. But no. so our quick pivot, Pauling Theater Exchange, silver lining. We have done some readings, some workshops online in Zoom, and in a couple of projects, we've had actors from all the time zones of continental US. So that was a bonus, right? The silver lining is that we can cast these terrific artists who have the time to work on these beautiful pieces. And we've done a screenplay, an episodic, and 3 new plays, and with wide range of artists and topics. So that's a silver lining. And but it's not the same. So what I'm doing is training. I'm doing the theatrical intimacy education training to be a intimacy coordinator, choreographer, director. And that I'm hoping to use that specifically to serve Saratoga Shakespeare Company to be their in-resident intimacy choreographer. And then it's always helping me as a teacher. I teach at UAlbany. I have 1 acting class this semester. It's mostly entirely online. And all of that foundational work of culture of consent is super helpful as a teacher. And that I can say is, you know, it's an opportunity for me to learn skills and to broaden my advocacy, understanding White Theaters We See You. That document has been hugely influential, and so I'm doing anti-racist theater training with Nicole Brewer and mental health first aid and all sorts of that work that may not have fit into my schedule because I'm almost fully furloughed, because Saratoga Shakespeare just decided last month to furlough until the new year, hoping to conserve our resources so we can do a season, because the one thing we have is that we're outside, and fingers crossed we can bring it back. You can
make that work. You can make that work. And in fact, over one thing I'm looking at now with the show and playhouse is the fact that we had no season. We did 1 weekend of a show this year, then had to close. So what I'm encouraging the board to think about is, yes, we want to take our season from this year and move the remainder of it, to next year. To your point, Steve, the rights we need to juggle, but also think about, okay, if we're going to do it next year, can we do those shows outside? Can we mount those shows somewhere other than in the theatre if the theatre isn't the place where people can be? But one thing I just wanted to ask you, your advocacy work, it's clearly very important to you, and clearly at the time that COVID and the pandemic and the restrictions hit, we were also reaching a peak on Black Lives Matter, Me Too, and especially in the performing arts, a lot of awareness that things had to happen, that things had to change, and also a feeling of momentum that things were changing. How has that been? it's similar to the question I asked earlier. Is it that now you have time to focus on that work, or is it that now you're limited in what you can actually achieve? How are things going with that side of things?
Well, I think you're right, and to think of it as opportunity for the industry, as we were talking about earlier, like not only just looking at the capabilities of our HVAC systems and the ability to keep our audience safe, but also to borrow from Joe Biden, build back better. Frankly, we have the time and the space, and so many generous offerings out there in which to partake in discussion or just listen. And there's tons of panels happening with a wide range of artists, just like here, free on Facebook, but are specific to topics such as gender issues, LGBTQ artists, BIPOC artists, and whatnot. So I think it's an opportunity that I don't know if I want to ever call a pandemic silver lining in the biggest sense that, we all feel really great that we get to be at home doing this.
Absolutely,
and unfortunately
yeah.
there are, but
Yep.
if we can I'm trying to think of the positives, and the positives is that I am fortunate in that my daughter is at school in person. Her school is doing an amazing job, Little Pauling Elementary, and other schools around are having momentary shutdowns. And we're just, I'm sure ours is coming, but as of now, she's been in school every day. And, I'm not any better at cleaning my house, but I certainly can get on the internet and dig around and find out what's out there that I should be interested, not just as an artist, but as a human. In that we should have the time to listen and the time to learn. And, the Me Too, intersectionally with BIPOC artists, I think is going to have a profound and positive change to our theater industry, locally, regionally, and then nationally. And if I can, continue to learn as an artist, I think then I won't get rusty, and I will continue to be charged up to do it when we do come back.
And that again is a message we've been hearing from a lot of people, and also hearing about, whilst again, silver lining is an odd term to use, but there are people who are thriving not necessarily because they've been able to grab that opportunity, but more because they're in the position to learn. They're in the position to take risks with certain things, not risks with their health and safety, but risks in terms of trying new things out. We talked earlier about the technology to be able to stage shows. Steve, you talked about the broadcasting old but archive material, and the notion that that's okay, but it's not, it's not really being at the theatre, is it? It's not really being present in a performance. And one of the things that happened towards the start of the pandemic lockdown was the broadcast of Hamilton. They broadcast Hamilton, and the interesting thing there that it was unlike most staged performances that you see, which are maybe 2 or 3 camera angles of the stage and a couple of close-ups. It was staged in a way, it was particularly put together in a way for broadcast, and that kind of speaks to maybe the way that if theatre is going to be locked down for any length of time, the way that those kind of performances need to be thought about, again, where the technology catches up to the need. and certainly when we're talking about the opportunities for pursuing activism or education of on particular issues, again, I think that's a great opportunity for a lot of smaller theatres and enterprises now to shift their focus, or at least to be able to focus on some of those things. Because I know in Robin, you'll appreciate this. With a small playhouse like Sherman, our season is what we do. And you put on 4 or 5 shows, and you run between these shows, and one clears out, and another one's rehearsing, and you're in, out, and you know, not a lot of time to do a lot of the other things you want to do. And I think now is a great opportunity for those of us who either don't feel we've ever had the time to focus on those things, or even haven't ever thought with a sort of organization that needs to, is maybe to focus on that. So I may well follow up with you on some of those points, just get your feel on how that might work with a with a small organization. So Robin, anything you wish to pursue?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that I just want to piggyback on what Steve was saying about opportunities and silver lining. I don't think, I'm not really calling it that these days, but because we're all, I mean, I do want to bring up one thing also is, and this is what Mary Ann Lamb had said, it's always been hard. It's always been hard in the theater or in the performing arts all the time. People getting gigs, people not getting gigs, people losing gigs, and all of that. And so I think we're seasoned for the most part in taking this on, which I think is a great thing. But the opportunities, I think, are pretty amazing. I mean, and you guys can discuss this if you'd like, or chime in. I mean, I wrote this play that we're doing on Saturday about 4 or 5 years ago, and we put it on in a basement in New Milford, Connecticut. Okay. It was a nice little black box, but not a lot of people went to see it. There is the chance that, I don't know, thousands when this is broadcast, we'll see it, and we're taping it, so it'll be available, and it's mine. We don't have to pay for the rights or anything like that. I'll talk to you, Steve, about that later.
Yeah. Maybe we'll see what we can work out.
Yeah, I want dinner for 2. Anyway.
Oh, there you go.
In Pauling.
Okay, dinner for 2. I'll take Steve and Leland with me. Oh, you didn't mean that? Okay.
No, I meant me and Tracy and Pauling. No, anyway.
I'll just casually walk by and go, "Oh, hey."
Oh, yes, you can join us. You can join us.
So, and I just think that's, I mean, for the screenwriters, I have a couple Facebook pages for screenwriters. I think that's an amazing opportunity. I don't know if they can, get it published after that or whatever. We have to figure that out later. But it just, in order for it to be seen,
yes,
it's an amazing thing. It's amazing. It's not fantastic. You're not there. You're not breathing with these actors. You're not gasping. You're not nodding your head. You're not feeding back. But at least there is a platform, So if anybody wants to comment on that stuff that they've gone through.
I just in September I got to be an actor, so like a unicorn sort of situation where I got to work with a theater. We did everything on Zoom. It was a Zoom production. It was with Wham Theater in Lenox, Mass. The production of Row by Lisa Loomer. And we took this bedroom right here. We moved that dresser up against the other wall, and they sent me a green screen, and I put that up and set up this computer and my ring light and pushed the cats out, and we filmed our scenes. And it was really, I think for seasoned actors, we could pull it off because we had like that foundation you were talking about of having done it in person, right? So you knew it was in your bones. It was in our bones. It was in our, and I would say, who am I talking to? Where are they? And they're going to be in that. You know, so they had this whole planned out storyboard, and they were going to they manipulated all of the boxes, and I would know, okay, that actor's over there, that actor's up there. It was like the Brady Bunch. That you know, that actor's down there, and we were in the scenes. We could hear each other, but we couldn't see each other because we weren't. You know, there were times we broke the fourth wall and we would talk right into the camera, but other times I'm pretending as if Steve and I are doing something together, and I'm, you know, we're talking like this for the presentation of it, and it had a full design, and it was wild, but we pulled it off. I mean, it wasn't theater and it wasn't film. It was sort of in a mishmash in the middle, right?
Right.
Like, so it's like the expectation of us having to deal with each other in this imagined space, I think was what was probably the most challenging. But again, I would much rather spend 6 hours doing that than, you know, doing some training video about, I don't know, office safety or whatever it is that I've had to do also at this time, right?
Well,
So
we're certainly learning. We're certainly learning. Robin and I are learning about the capabilities of this platform, the limitations, and
the audience. People from Maine and Michigan and Washington State and Arizona and Texas and Florida, like all these people, and they could, you know, as the ticket sales came in, they were like, "Oh my gosh, we're reaching a global audience." Like never before. And we had some people in Australia log on that so-and-so and so-and-so knew in the cast, right? So your potential of doing your piece online, Robin, is like, who knows? Like you said, it could be...
and that's one of the things that we're hoping for this production. And you know, with no, you know, I'm not doing Robin Dome by saying that this is our first foray into this. So, you know, as president, I want this to work. For this to work, you know, we want to make sure we're not taking too many risks. We're not going too far outside of what we know we can achieve. So, you know, we don't necessarily want to go with a completely new work. I know this play pretty well. I know how it's set, so we know how it can work. So when Robin and I talked about it, it seemed like a very logical choice. The timing is ideal with Halloween, because it is a spooky ghost story, and Steve's back. I see he's connecting to audio. There we go. Hi, Steve.
I am so sorry. My phone ran out of juice. So
that's okay. That's okay.
I'm doing this over my sink.
That's okay.
Exactly, because you got it plugged in.
But the point for me is that I want this to work. We're not going to charge for this particular show, because it's the first thing we're doing, and I want to make sure that, you know, if things aren't 100%, because we're still juggling some of the technology. I mean, the play is great, but the technology will get in the way. You know, I right now, I don't want to charge people money to see, you know, us do our thing with Zoom for the first time, but we will have a big donate button, and hopefully that will you know, that will raise some funds. But more,
and the one big thing about it is it's short.
It's short. It's 45 minutes, 50 minutes, and we'll you know, we'll get it out there.
Zoomed out, you can zoom a little bit in, and then you can zoom out again.
Yeah. So, you know, it ticks all the boxes. It gives us our first foray into this world. It gives people some theatre to watch, or some performance to watch. It gives a couple of very talented actors the opportunity to perform, and it gives one up-and-coming young struggling playwright a leg up the ladder to get people to see his work beyond the basement in New Milford.
You can see the struggle.
Yeah, see the struggle. Yeah.
So, and the other thing, I just want to throw this in there. I'm working with we're working with two actresses. I know one very, very well, and the other one was a student of mine who went to Neighborhood Playhouse, graduated from there, and was, you know, basically going to do what Tracy was talking about, the New York City, you know, working 3 jobs, auditioning, all that stuff. She's home. She's home in Middlebury, Connecticut, and she's aching for something to do, and she would never have done this. She would never would have done this if she was in the city. She would just not have time, and so that's an opportunity too. Leland, did you want to say anything about the subject, or?
I just wanted to say that I am sure that there is a community that is desperate to watch theater right now, despite whence it comes. They're desperate to see it in any form. And it's a new skill that we as actors, like you were saying, Tracy, that it's not quite film. It's not, you don't really quite know what it is, but, and we humans, we just love change. We're so good with it, said no one ever. So that's the thing that keeps us on our toes. And the moment we don't want to, I think all of us have said it here, the moment we don't want to fight for something a little bit more and learn about it and do it is the moment we should just become funeral directors, because we're just going to die. You know, that's not who we are. So I think that moment of having that community see this play, when is it again? Shameless plug?
Shameless plug. It's Halloween night, 8 o'clock on more than likely on Facebook Live, because I don't think I'll get my act together enough to get it onto any other platform before that. But then it will be available to stream on various platforms after that.
But I really do feel that people, especially the community around here, you guys are so well known. And I think we'd really love to see it. And it gives us something also to look forward to.
Yep.
I hope so. I'm looking forward to us producing it and broadcasting it. I know Robin is putting the finishing touches to the performance. This week is our Tech Week. We had a literal Tech Sunday.
Yeah.
The most literal Tech Sunday that I've ever done, where it was making sure that Zoom worked and making sure the lights were right in someone's room. So we had that yesterday, and it's coming together.
Are you saying I'm still editing the script this week? Is that what you're saying?
No, you'd never do that, would you, Robin? No. It's always set in stone months before.
I have to make it Zoom friendly. Gosh darn it!
But it's shaping up to be a really good show, and I do hope that people do enjoy it. So thank you for letting me get that plug in, Leland. We've run over, which I think, Robin, we're finding that an hour typically isn't enough for this show, because we could talk for hours on a lot of this. Again, you know, Leland's sort of hit the nail on the head. You know, there's opportunity. The people want things to do. People want this medium, whatever it is we end up in, to work, and people want to see shows. People who want to create. Now, if we can get to the stage where we can draw in all those other folks whose livelihood depends on performance as well, then if we can find a way to do that, then we have something that may well work, because, you know, none of us can see an end to this, or necessarily return to normal for a significant period. So what we've got, we really need to make the most of and take the opportunities. So so thank you very much, everybody. Again, a fascinating talk, fascinating chat, great guests, and probably the most photogenic picture I've seen on Zoom is Steve Schroko in front of that picture on the wall. He looks like he should be in a pharmaceutical ad, or starring in a major Broadway musical. He looks the part. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Do come back and see us. Watch the show. Come back and be guests again in a while. Let us know how things are going for you, and we will be back next week. Next week's a very big week. Why is it a very big week? It's a very big week because I can't get my ear thing in. No, it's a very big week because we'll be having our tech special, which I'm really looking forward to. I think a lot of fun, great guests on that show, and a lot of really good information that I think will be very, very practical for a lot of people who are out there producing and wanting to put things out. There's something else going on next week, and I can't quite put my finger on what it is.
Doesn't matter.
Yes. Yes. Vote. Okay. This isn't a political show. We're not going to tell you how to vote, but vote. Exercise your vote. If you're involved with the arts at all, certain vote may feel like a no-brainer, but all I think we can say on here is to vote with your heart and vote with your conscience, and
be informed.
Yeah, be informed, and make sure you exercise what is a right and a privilege and a duty to look after your country and the location where you are. So that's all I'm going to say in terms of a semi-political message. With that, we'll leave you. We're back again next week, same time. That's 7:30 on Monday, and all that remains is for me to say goodbye and for our guests to say goodbye. Bye, guests. And
Thank you.
The
last thing is for Robin to say goodnight. Say goodnight, Robin.
Good night, Robin.
There you go. Good night, Robin. Thank you so much, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
See you all in the real world.